All right, let's jump right into this explainer of Professor Oscar Katwood's incredibly gripping fiction, Making Peace with Energy, Frequency, and Vibrations. Today, we're exploring a seriously unsettling premise. What if that modern exhaustion you're feeling right now, that constant underlying buzz of anxiety, what if it's actually by design? We're going to unpack the entire architecture of this fictional world, check out the wild mechanisms used to control its citizens, and most importantly, we'll dive into the fascinating ways the characters actually fight back. Now, Professor Katwood is super clear right up front. He flat out states this is a work of fiction, but oftentimes truth is far stranger than fiction. Look around and make up your own minds. While officially this is a spy thriller, I really challenge you as we go through this explainer today to take a hard look at your own daily life. Pay close attention to the details of the world he builds, and honestly, decide for yourself just how much of this fiction feels, well, a little too close to home.
Actually, do me a quick favor right now. Just take a split second and notice your jaw. Are you clenching it? Listen to the background noise in your room for a second. Maybe it's the hum of your fridge or the whine of your computer fan. Think about that heavy fatigue that never quite seems to lift. Or, that super shallow breathing you catch yourself doing when you're just doom scrolling on your phone. In Katwood's world, citizens just call this stress, or they blame bad sleep, the economy, or the news. But what if that constant low-level tension isn't just a byproduct of modern life, but a completely, deliberately engineered state?
So, that brings us to part one, the Darchitect's symphony, manipulating the signal. You see, our villain here isn't your typical dictator with a massive army. He's this shadowy figure known simply as the Darchitect, and he literally controls the world through a hidden symphony of invisible frequencies. And the Darchitect's whole methodology, it is absolutely chilling. He operates on the idea that perception isn't reality at all. It's just signal processing. He literally doesn't look at humans as citizens or even souls. To him, we are just biological antennas. I mean, think about it. Your eyes, your ears, your skin, they're basically just tuned to these really narrow bands of light, sound, pressure, and temperature, right? They're just 5 delicate transducers wired directly into a nervous system. The Darchitect figures out he doesn't need to break bodies to control the masses. Nope, he just needs to alter the signals those biological antennas are picking up, and bam, the reality they experience changes completely from the inside out. He pulls this off by manipulating these bands of frequencies that wrap around the planet, almost like invisible weather systems. And these aren't just abstract sci-fi concepts, they're baked right into the daily environment. We're talking about the super subtle flicker rates of the screens we stare at all day, the low grinding infrastructure hum of electrical transformers and transport grids, even microbursts from satellites overhead. By doing things like slightly shifting light temperatures to exhaust our eyes and layering these barely audible discordant rhythms into our news cycles and social feeds, he manages to keep humanity trapped in a permanent, exhausted state of almost panic. Which leads perfectly into part 2, Nervous Systems Under Siege, the biological battlefield. Because the ultimate target of this entire invisible symphony of industrial noise isn't to hack our tech, it's actually weaponizing our very own biology right against us. Here's the crazy part. The Darchitect doesn't actually want people acutely sick and dying. I mean, that would be totally inefficient and way too obvious. Instead, his master plan is to keep everyone perpetually out of tune. When a person's innate resonant frequency gets messed with nonstop, their nervous system completely loses its coherence. Signals start firing chaotically, cortisol and hormones spike at totally the wrong times, and sleep becomes completely fragmented. What you're left with is a population that is functionally capable of clocking into work, but entirely too drained to ever rebel or push back. The Darchitect literally calls this dis-ease. Notice how he savors that word. Not a sickness, but literally just the profound absence of ease. This sets up a literal invisible war raging inside the citizens. Think about it. Our nervous systems were originally designed to interpret soothing patterns from nature, right? Wind, flowing water, birdsong. But now, because we're processing the cold blue glare of screens deep into the midnight hours and observing overlapping vibration fields from engines everywhere, our sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight response, is basically lit up like a blazing emergency beacon 24/7. And meanwhile, the parasympathetic system, which is strictly meant for healing, resting, and restoring our bodies, barely gets a whisper in. The entire population is just endlessly cycling through these wildly dysregulated states, leaving them completely spiritually sedated. All right, part 3, Guardians Between the Signals, Finding the Baseline. Because, come on, as with any truly great thriller, there's always a resistance. We meet Kale and Alara, two figures who definitely don't fight back with cyber hacking or explosions. They fight back using something way more subtle: calibration. We're introduced to this character named Mara. She's in her mid-30s and basically represents the everyday average citizen. She is completely exhausted, totally wired, and constantly feels like she's being pulled in a dozen invisible directions. Kale points out that she's being detuned, and to help her out, Alara simply slides over the small, plain wooden box. Inside, a tuning fork. When she strikes it, it doesn't emit some harsh beep or digital whine like all our machines do. Instead, it produces this incredibly clear, round, and remarkably patient tone. And as Mara closes her eyes and just focuses on that single tone, she experiences this massive physical unwinding. It's like a deep muscle she didn't even know she was tensing finally just lets go. Her breathing lengthens out, her racing, chaotic thoughts finally slow down. Alara sums up this wild phenomenon perfectly. She says, "This is not magic, it's resonance." See, our nervous systems are literally built to respond to specific natural patterns. When you're constantly drowning in distorted artificial noise, you completely lose your baseline. That tuning fork is simply reintroducing a pure, coherent frequency so the body can finally remember its natural state. This brings us to part 4, Tools of the Rebellion, the 4 keys. To actually help people wake up and recognize they're being played, the Guardians teach 4 vital, super practical strategies. The Guardians figure out pretty quickly that if people don't have a baseline of true calm, they can't even tell they're being manipulated in the first place. So they basically become these traveling calibration points. And what's absolutely fascinating here is how Katwood takes everyday wellness practices and totally reframes them as literal tactical countermeasures in this massive clandestine war for human perception. Against artificial stress rhythms, they deploy breathwork. Against fake vibration fields, they use grounding. To fight the constant barrage of noise, they use sound and pure silence. And against that harsh, cold blue glare of screens, they practice strict light hygiene. Let's actually break these down a bit, because this is where the fiction gets super applicable to our own lives. Key number 1 is breathwork. We're talking slow, deep exhales that physically force the body's rest and restore pathways to switch back on. Key 2 is grounding, literally putting your bare feet on real earth to sync up with natural electromagnetic fields that the Darchitect simply cannot hack. The third key is using deliberate, intentional silence or pure tones to recalibrate your ears away from all that grinding industrial noise. And the fourth is light hygiene, meaning dimming those artificial overheads and actually exposing your retinas to the natural shifting colors of a real sunrise or sunset. These 4 keys literally unlock a memory encoded deep within our biology of what real, genuine ease is actually supposed to feel like. Okay, let's move into part 5, reclaiming inner resonance, the awakening. So the big question is, what actually happens when someone like Mara takes her newly calibrated, finely tuned nervous system back out into the absolute chaos of the city? Does it just magically fix the world for her? Well, Katwood writes this brilliant line: "The world did not become kinder, but its tricks had become more visible." Mara doesn't suddenly become invincible, but all of a sudden the manipulation is glaringly obvious to her. She actually starts noticing the exact irritating flicker rate of a digital billboard. She actively feels that subtle creeping agitation rising in her chest when she scrolls on her phone. But here's the kicker. Instead of just succumbing to the digital trance, she stops. She closes her eyes and she takes 3 slow breaths. The panic-driven news headlines, the restless, anxious pacing of the music playing in the subway, it all suddenly lights up in her awareness as completely obvious manipulation. She's got her baseline back, which means the Darchitect's illusions simply don't work on her anymore without her catching them. And this is exactly what signals the Darchitect's ultimate defeat. Back in his dark underground server chamber, his massive global frequency map starts showing these tiny, unpredictable fluctuations. The agitation curves he relies on start dipping unexpectedly in little pockets all around the city. He angrily calls them anomalies. But actually, scratch that. They aren't anomalies at all. They're people. Every single individual who learns to tune their own nervous system back to a natural, coherent baseline becomes infinitely harder to manipulate, way harder to frighten, and impossible to just herd around. The Guardians aren't out there blowing up headquarters. They are literally dismantling the system from the inside out, just by helping individuals remember their own natural harmony. Katwood wraps up this whole concept with such a powerful realization. A nervous system that has actually made peace with its own energy, frequency, and vibration does not surrender easily to borrowed signals. It inherently knows when something feels off, and from that one simple grounded knowing, actual revolutions can grow. So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take away from our explainer today. Really look at your own life, your daily environment, your habits. Is your nervous system blindly surrendering to the borrowed, frantic signals of screens, news feeds, and endless noise? Or are you going to finally take a breath, tune out the static, and make peace with your own frequency today?